Hey guys, Chris here, and I am a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is January 24th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, before I begin, I just want to thank you all for joining yesterday in the live stream, despite all the complications I had in the beginning. Shout out to Ukraine Matters, Georgie, for helping me out a little bit. I somehow clicked on the right buttons and I got the webcam to work. So, again, a huge thank you to all of you that joined me. And I apologize for those that I wasn't able to answer the questions. If you had any questions, I tried to answer as many as possible, but unfortunately, there was a lot of them. So I had a great conversation with all of you. Thank you, and let's make it. Let's do it again. Maybe in the next few weeks, if you're interested, let me know in the comments. I would be down to do another live stream, and perhaps the next time it will be a little bit with less technical issues. So that's that, and let's get to the news in Ukraine. So first, a little quick map update. To be honest, last couple of days since my last video, there haven't been many changes on the map. It's been pretty, let's say, stable in the sense that there hasn't been many breakthroughs. So overall, right now in Krymina, the Ukrainians are trying to push towards Krymina, but as you can see here, every 50 to 100 meters, they're feeling a resistance, right? The Russians have put a lot of defenses in the forests around Krymina, which are very dense, and there's a lot of trenches, a lot of armor, and the Russians keep filling up these trenches with more mobilized men. So it's really difficult for the Ukrainian soldiers right now to push through. And that also includes the fact that the Russians are doing a lot of counteroffensives in that front in Krymina. So overall, it's pretty much unchanged in this area. There's counteroffensives. The Ukrainians then go on the offensive. So overall, it's pretty stable here. Not a lot of movements, but very, very heavy fighting right now in the woods of Krymina. And the same for Svatove. So overall, the last few months have been pretty, let's say, unchanged on this front. And that obviously is because of the mobilization. The mobilization allowed the Russians to constantly throw men on the front lines and constantly fill up these weakening defenses that they have. But manpower in here does play a role. So that's that. And in terms of Bakhmut, well, the same thing. The big news was that the Russians did take over Soledar, but before they took over, they completely ruined the city. So there's nothing left to protect here. So the Ukrainians still have the high ground overlooking the city of Soledar. So that's really crucial for the Ukrainian forces to hold this high ground. I would say it's very critical if the Russians, it would be in a critical situation if the Russians would be able to break through and take control over these hills they're overlooking Soledar, Pidgorodne, and Krasna Hora. Bakhmut, again, the Russians are at the outskirts. They cannot really break through. The defenses here are solid on the Ukrainian side. Now, here, this is where things are a little bit more critical. The Russians are having success at pushing through on this hill in Klishivka. The Ukrainians still have overall advantage because there's more hills here, and this is a very open field. There was a video that was um, recently uploaded from a Ukrainian artillery team where it showed a complete decimation of a Russian platoon. And overall, here it's getting to a critical situation, but the Ukrainians are still trying to stabilize it by doing counteroffensives. So I'll keep you guys updated for Klishivka, but it's not really looking good. So hopefully the Ukrainians will be able to mount a counteroffensive to push the Russians back to Klishivka. Klishivka it's a small town of 500, 400 people pre-war. So in terms of its how meaningful it is, it's not really meaningful. But what is meaningful is this hill that the Ukrainians, I think, need to have control over because this gives the Russians the ability to then push towards the main highway that leads into Bakhmut, and this is a lifeline for the Ukrainians. So they cannot allow the Russians to to break through to the main highway here. So overall, that's that for Donbass. Donetsk City, it's the same old, not much going on here. Not going to really talk about it. The other last thing I wanted to discuss, and I mentioned in my live stream, is that the Russians did try to attempt an offensive here in Zaporizhia, and they were quick to announce great victories, but overall nothing happened. There was a video of a platoon of Russian soldiers just rushing in the open fields here, and they got destroyed by the Ukrainian artillery. So there was a platoon of about 25 to maybe 40 soldiers running around somewhere here in Orikhiv area, and they got annihilated. So overall, now this offensive has failed from the Russian side, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to try again. It's critical for the Russians right now because they somewhat picked up an initiative based on the mobilization that they had. They have, fresh troops and they can keep throwing them at will, nonstop every day. So that's the advantage that the Russians have right now. So that's that. But the very positive news today is that tomorrow, on January 25th, according to sources, the German Chancellor has decided that he's going to send Leopard 2 tanks and allow other countries such as Poland to do so. So that's fantastic. The Leopard 2s are coming. This is a list of all the operators of these tanks. There's more, but these are the closest Ukrainian allies that would perhaps be able to send these Leopard 2s to Ukraine. So overall, there's rumors that Ukraine could get nearby future next couple months about 100 of these. So these would be game changers for an offensive in April and May. So in the spring and summertime when obviously the weather is going to be better for maneuverability and obviously the summers and spring and summer are better periods for offensives. So I'm very happy that this is happening. Still disappointed the way it was handled by the German government, but I think that it is to be expected. That's the decision. That's the way it is with Olaf Scholz, unfortunately. So at least the Leopards are going to be coming. I'm confident about it. It just took more time than expected. And along with these great news, the United States is leaning towards also sending the Abrams tanks to Ukraine as well. How many of them? It's still unclear. And tomorrow also there is supposed to be an announcement from the Biden administration that they're going to be sending the Abrams to Ukraine. Take it with a grain of salt. This is a video that I saw on Twitter. Somewhere in Kansas, there's Fort Riley in Kansas, where there was a train car full of Abrams and Bradley tanks on it heading somewhere. So could be just training somewhere in the United States, could be towards Ukraine. Who knows? So this I just thought it would be interesting because it was filmed today. So who knows? Hopefully it's heading towards Ukraine, but it could be also, domestic training for the U.S. soldiers. So overall, these tanks are going to be great for the summer. Right now, obviously, it doesn't make sense to use them because the ground is very muddy. It's difficult to maneuver a 66-ton tank um, in the weather like this. So, but these are, Soviet killers. Like these tanks are going to be destroying T-72s nonstop, the T-80s nonstop. The Soviet era, tanks have no chance against the tanks, the Abrams tanks and the Leopard 2. So, really looking forward to seeing these tanks on the front lines. But there's also the question of training the Ukrainian soldiers because this is very high tech. Also setting up the logistical lines for repair, maintenance of these tanks. So there's a lot of questions also to answer in that regard. So nothing is really that easy as well. Um, in less positive news is that last couple of days there have been many, many scandals going on in the Ukraine government. I did mention it in my live stream yesterday that there's a lot of top Ukraine officials that have quit following an anti-corruption investigation that has been ongoing for the last couple months in Ukraine. And so this anti-corruption investigation found out primarily the most important one is that one of the defense minister, Shapovalov, who resigned today, that he oversaw the purchase of military food supplies at inflated prices from a relatively unknown firm. And according to these investigations, they were buying up these contracts at inflated prices over 300%. So, for example, if let's say a pound of potato is usually $2 a pound, then the minister was giving these contracts for, let's say, for a pound of potato would be $6 then. So it was 300% more for just basic staple foods. So overall, this is a massive massive scandal because you have people that are literally profiteering within the Ukraine government from this brutal war, as there are thousands of Ukrainian soldiers, dying on a weekly basis, and these people are literally trying to take advantage of this situation for themselves. It's disgusting, and yeah, it's great that they quit, but I think that they should be prosecuted, judicially speaking. They should be spending time in jail if there's any, proof that they have, taken part of this corruption, in this corruption ring. So I think that there's a lot of questions to be answered, and also the defense minister himself, Oleksiy Reznikov, has been under scrutiny for the same reason. So there's a lot of top officials here that are, under investigation. So I hope that they're going to be brought to justice because this is unacceptable. The bloodshed that's being spread within Ukraine, and then you have these officials that are taking advantage. It's unacceptable. So it's unfortunate, but I also want to show you guys the truth that there is still corruption ongoing in Ukraine, and it needs to be very quickly dealt with. This is the chance to really clear up a lot of these people that don't belong in these positions in the government. Last but not least, now our current, clown within the Russian Ministry of Defense, Gerasimov, complains about the intensity of hostilities which Russia has never before experienced. So I've written this here, but Gerasimov already displays a defeatist attitude. And if you guys don't remember, when Surovikin just started his new position, he said something very similar. He had a very defeatist, interview where he said that we don't have the choice but to pull out our forces from Kherson, nearby future. He was getting the Russian people ready for, psychological defeat, right? It was also moral defeat for the Russians that they had to pull out from Kherson city and cross the Dnipro River. And so I think that this also kind of is an indication that the Russians are perhaps Gerasimov's trying to prepare again the Russian people towards a defeat in the nearby future, perhaps somewhere around April and summertime, where the Ukrainians are going to start their counteroffensive. And you can see here that he said that our mobilization system has not been fully adapted to the new modern economic relations, so we have had to correct everything on the fly. Russia has never experienced such a level of intensity of warfare as today. Practically the entire collective West is opposing it. And that also, obviously, last video also showed you guys that the Russian Ministry of Defense has been putting Panzer systems in Moscow on top of rooftops of administrative buildings. And it's an indication that it's a propaganda run for the Russian state, right? They want to really show to the Russians that, well, we're not fighting Ukraine anymore. We're fighting NATO. And so, this is critical. It's a holy war. And now we have to fight 36 countries or whatever. And it's not Ukraine anymore. So, I think that this is also perhaps a way for Gerasimov to prepare the Russians that it's going to be a tough fight because now we're fighting NATO, which is obviously bullcrap. And here you can see that I put an image today. It was also a bad day for the Russian Air Forces. They lost 3 Alligator helicopters, the Ka-52s. And yesterday, I think they also lost 2 Su-25s and another Ka-52 helicopter. So overall, things are not really looking great. I'm not even know what they're running these helicopters and jet fighters because the Ukrainians have saturated or saturated with man pads and anti-air defense systems everywhere. So uh, obviously there's probably no planning involved in this. So overall, things are great, and hopefully next couple months, Ukraine is going to be able to mount multiple battalions to mount a great counteroffensive on all the fronts I've mentioned. So that's it, guys. This is the video for today. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content, and I will see you guys in the next update. Thank you.